The Space Shuttle Endeavour exhibit at the California Science Center is one of the top things to do in Los Angeles, and an experience that I cannot recommend highly enough. In this video, I'll share some of my best videos, images, and thoughts on the experience of beholding Endeavour in person. The Space Shuttle Endeavour became the latest star to call Los Angeles home when the California Science Center was selected by NASA to be the permanent home for Endeavour. The Endeavour exhibit wows crowds with its story of space exploration and displays of life on board. Visitors can see and touch the tires from the last mission, learn how astronauts eat their meals and use the restroom, and even take a simulated ride through space. Before you begin your Endeavour experience, don't miss the remarkable trio of NASA space capsules in the Air and Space Gallery, on loan from the National Air and Space Museum, Smithsonian Institution. The Science Center is one of the only museums in the entire country to feature flown space capsules from all three pre-shuttle programs, including Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, said Dr. Phillips. In 1961, the Mercury Redstone 2 capsule took a chimpanzee named Ham into space in preparation for a human launch. The center's Gemini 11 was flown into space by Pete Conrad and Dick Gordon in September 1966. The Apollo capsule on display is the actual Apollo-Soyuz command module that docked with Russia's Soyuz spacecraft in July 1975. Endeavour, the California STORY. The Space Shuttle experience begins with Endeavour, the California Story, a companion exhibit that celebrates Endeavour's many scientific achievements and its strong connection to Southern California, where all the orbiters were built. The California Story includes images of Endeavour under construction locally in Palmdale and Downey, as well as artifacts that flew into space aboard Endeavour. Few things capture our collective imaginations like space travel. For decades, Americans have held a sense of civic pride about the progress we've made in exploring space, as we have competed with other nations in reaching significant milestones first. Ostensibly, it might seem somewhat odd that we feel such a vested interest in exploring space. Yet, given how it represents America's sense of innovation and exploration, it feels perfectly right. For me, standing under Space Shuttle Endeavour was the emotional realization of that civic pride in space travel. I've always enjoyed watching documentaries about NASA and reading about their latest advancements, but this made it all real. Being there under that majestic space shuttle, the creation of America's best scientific engineering, space aircraft, minds, was a powerful and truly moving experience. For all of the turmoil that might exist right now in the country, we still have people capable of creating this. Watching the general, awestruck reaction of other visitors reinforced the notion that we still have the national spirit that drove the progress of the space program, and so many other advances. It was, in a word, reassuring. Okay, with that emotional tangent out of the way, let's backtrack and cover some info about Space Shuttle Endeavour, since the exhibit itself covers all of this. After being retired, numerous organizations and cities submitted proposals to NASA for displays of Endeavour. It was ultimately awarded to Los Angeles, and the exhibit has a strong emphasis on Endeavour's connection to Southern California, where all of the orbiters were built. This California connection is further reinforced through the excellent Mission 26, the big Endeavour video that is shown at the California Science Center, showing the arduous process of transporting Endeavour from LAX to the California Science Center. The LA Times has a great time-lapse showing the process and the people behind this move, which further speaks to the civic behind the underlies the space program. Currently, there are two stages to the exhibit at the California Science Center. The first is in the main building, where Endeavour Together, Parts and People, provides important background and context. This companion exhibit features artifacts from Endeavour, including the external tank. Endeavour tires. At one display, visitors are encouraged to touch the actual tires from Endeavour Flight STS-134, which show the wear from its final landing on the runway at the Kennedy Space Center on June 1, 2011. The large photo behind the tires gives you a hint about why the main landing gear tires are not worn equally, said Dr. Phillips. See if you can match what the photo shows to what you actually see on the tires themselves. Like most aircraft tires, space shuttle tires were filled with nitrogen. Shuttle tires had to weather temperature changes from -40 degrees Fahrenheit in space to +130 degrees Fahrenheit on landing in a matter of minutes, as well as a drop in altitude of over 200 miles in less than an hour. Sally Ride Curtain. According to the Science Center, how do the astronauts go to the bathroom is by far the most frequently asked question, posed by children and adults alike. Formerly known as the Waste Collection System, or WCS, the space potty functioned somewhat like a high-tech vacuum cleaner in the microgravity environment on orbit. The space potty was located on the shuttle's mid-deck, just behind the crew hatch. At the space potty display, look for the Sally Ride Curtain, a privacy curtain nicknamed for the astronaut who became the first American woman in space as a crew member of the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1983. Dr. Phillips noted, apparently not a priority until female astronauts came aboard the shuttle, the privacy screen ushered in a new era of luxury in low Earth orbit. Rocketdyne Operations Support Center, ROSC. Every space shuttle launch, from the first to the last, was monitored from Los Angeles at the Rocketdyne Operations Support Center, ROSC. Space Shuttle Main Engines, SSMEs, for the orbiters were originally built by Rocketdyne in Canoga Park, located in the San Fernando Valley. Engineers at the ROSC, aka the ROCSOC, remotely monitored the SSMEs during launch and for the first 8.5 minutes of every shuttle flight, checking pressures, temperatures, and other readouts until the shuttle reached orbit. If something went wrong, Rocketdyne staff could provide recommendations to Launch Control in Florida or Mission Control in Houston. Pratt & Whitney Rocketdyne donated the entire ROSC to the California Science Center for display in the California Story exhibit. Space Hub. Serving as a workshop for astronauts, the Space Hub logistics module gave astronauts extra room to live and work in space. Invented by aerospace engineer and entrepreneur Robert Citrin, Space Hub was initially conceived as a way for tourists to travel into space aboard the shuttles. Although NASA didn't allow Space Hub to be used for space tourism, Space Hub was the first payload component developed by a private business that humans could occupy in space. A tunnel connected the pressurized Space Hub to the orbiter's crew compartment, so astronauts could reach it and work inside it without putting on spacesuits. Space Hub modules flew on the shuttle 18 times, and the first and last Space Hub missions were flown on Endeavour. Space Shuttle Main Engine, SSME. Still considered the most advanced, efficient rocket engine in the world, the Space Shuttle Main Engines, SSMEs, worked together with the solid rocket boosters to push the shuttle from launch pad to orbit. Clustered in a set of 3 at the back of each orbiter, the SSMEs burned propellants from the large, orange external tank mounted on the orbiter's underside. The 3 SSMEs propelled the shuttle with over 1.5 million pounds of thrust. The energy released by the 3 SSMEs was equal to the output of 13 Hoover dams. Backwards, U.S. flag. Sharp-eyed visitors will notice that the U.S. flag on the starboard side of the Endeavour appears to be backwards. But tradition, and an interpretation of the U.S. flag code, suggests that the blue field on the flag should always be pointed forward, into the wind, as if the flag were flying on a flagpole in the breeze. The flag is painted the same way on many aircraft, such as the tail of Air Force One at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. Mission 26 banner. The Endeavour's journey from the Kennedy Space Center to its new home at the California Science Center was dubbed Mission 26, the Big Endeavour. For its final flight, the Endeavour was mounted on top of NASA's Boeing 747 shuttle carrier aircraft, SCA. After a cross-country trek to Edwards Air Force Base in the Mojave Desert, the Endeavour made a 5-hour loop that took it to Northern California before it entered Los Angeles airspace over the Santa Monica Pier. The Endeavour made low-level passes over LA landmarks such as the Hollywood sign, Griffith Observatory, Dodger Stadium, Battleship Iowa, the Queen Mary, and Disneyland before it landed at Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, on September 21, 2012. After careful preparations, the Endeavour made an extraordinary 12-mile trip through the streets of LA that began on October 11 and ended at the Science Center on October 14. Los Angeles-based AAA flag and banner created a commemorative Mission 26 banner in honor of the Endeavour's historic journey. Dr. Phillips said, "The banner includes the names of all people, staff, volunteers, key donors, and vendors who had a hand in getting Endeavour from LAX to the Science Center. Simply couldn't have done it without them." Dr. Phillips added, "Just as important as the thousands of people who moved Endeavour were the 1.5 million observers and well-wishers who helped us take care of the spacecraft and cheered us along the way." The custom banner and other custom signage printed by AAA flag and banner can be viewed in the Samuel Oskin Pavilion. The banner is displayed on the wall opposite the entrance. In addition to flags, decals, and banners, AAA flag and banner helped create the entrance for the shuttle simulator, as well as special backlit fabrics for the shuttle display. Samuel Oskin Air and Space Center. The Samuel Oskin Pavilion is actually a temporary site for the public to view the Endeavour. Inside the pavilion, look for a scale model of the Samuel Oskin Air and Space Center, a spectacular new educational facility with the Endeavour as its centerpiece. Dr. Phillips said, "Don't think that the Samuel Oskin Air and Space Center will feature only the Space Shuttle Endeavour in launch position. It'll have aircraft, planetary probes, telescopes, and spacecraft from the pre-shuttle programs, as well as displays about the exciting future of space exploration and the origins of the universe. It's an awe-inspiring experience to first lay eyes on this shuttle." The Space Shuttle Endeavour is raised 10 feet above the ground with an incredible hydraulic system, so you can walk beneath it. Get a close look at the heat tiles on the Space Shuttle Endeavour. These protected the shuttle when it re-entered the atmosphere. Check out the live camera that shows the inside of the Space Shuttle's payload bay that carried the fuselage and cargo. There's also a live video feed of the Space Shuttle Endeavour's flight deck. See the main engine of the Space Shuttle Endeavour. Additional living space was provided by the Space Hub module, connected to the crew compartment by a pressurized tunnel. The Rocketdyne Operations Support Center is where engineers remotely monitor the shuttle's performance in the first 8.5 minutes after takeoff, before reaching orbit. Touch the worn tires on Endeavour's last flight, that reached temperatures of 170 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the fuel cell power plant that generated electricity on board the Space Shuttle Endeavour. 3 of these were required for each shuttle. There was a lot of pride when the Space Shuttle Endeavour came to LA, because many of the parts were created in nearby Palmdale, California. Overall, I cannot imagine anyone not loving the Space Shuttle Endeavour exhibits at the California Science Center. Space exploration is just undeniably cool, and NASA is right up there with the national parks as something that represents the best of America. There are few things that compare with seeing a space shuttle in person, and I think the photos don't do it justice. Cliché is very apt here. If my gushing hasn't already made it apparent, I highly recommend visiting the California Science Center to see this.